Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining this Albert Toolkit Walkthrough today. I'm Charlotte Westlake, I'm the Sustainable Production Officer at Albert, and please do introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. I've got some colleagues on hand who will be monitoring the Q&A section as well, so if you have a question, please put your question in the Q&A. And my colleagues will also be putting links about things that I'm talking about in the chat throughout the webinar, so please keep an eye on that. If you'd like to keep up to date with Albert, please give us a follow at We Are Albert on all social channels. So today's agenda, what we're going to be going through today, I'm going to introduce Albert a little bit about what we do, who we are, the toolkit and its main features, methodology behind the toolkit, different accounts and types of user. Then the exciting bit, what we're all here for, is a walkthrough of the tools. And I'll then go through some further resources, help that's available, some upcoming updates, and we'll then have time for questions. So who are Alberts? Albert is a leader for environmental sustainability for the film and TV industry. So Albert was founded in 2011 at the BBC. It started off as a kind of fancy spreadsheet for productions to input detail about their travel, materials, disposal, and it would then give them a carbon footprint of their production. So it was quickly realised that this was really important for the whole industry. So it was then gifted over to BAFTA, where we've been ever since. And we're now on our third iteration of that tool, and we're used by all the main broadcasters and production groups in the UK. And as of 2021, we have also been a global project. So we'd like to thank all of our consortium members, and in particular Fremantle, for helping us to take our sustainable vision to an international arena. So we've got two main aims, and that's to reduce the environmental impact of the screen industry. And we also support the development of on-screen content that supports a sustainable future. So the main features of the toolkit. We've got two main tools: the carbon calculator, which is there to measure the footprint of a production. And then we've also got the carbon action plan, which serves to reward productions for actively taking steps to reduce that impact. So these two are separate tools, but they work in tandem together. So I'll go through them more in when I go through the walkthrough. But within these tools, we've also got a whole host of reports that we can access about productions, a tips and tricks section, and also we're translating the tools into multiple languages as well for our global audiences. I'm not going to go into too much detail about our methodology because we have a useful article on the website if you'd like to know more, which my colleagues will put in the chat now. But our calculator covers aspects of scopes 1, 2, and 3 and aligns with the greenhouse gas protocol. So many of the factors in the tool have been taken from DEFRA, but we have also built a database of around 300 different electricity emissions for different countries and states for our international users as well. To help productions input data as easily and accurately as possible, we've also built benchmarks for things like home office, studio, production office, and accommodation, amongst others. And we also have some spend benchmarks relating to transport, materials, and so on. So all the benchmarks within the calculator are built using data from our tool that we've collated over the last 11 years, along with external sources as well. And we are constantly updating the toolkit to make sure that it's as up to date and accurate as possible. So within the calculator, we've also got a whole host of reports that you can use, whether you're a single production or a production company. So examples of these are the single production report, if you just want to take a dive into the detail of your own production. You can do a head-to-head report, which is comparing two productions or one or more productions directly with each other. You've got a compare to average report where you can compare your production to the industry average, and that can be broken down by genre as well. We've also got a multiple production report, which can also serve as a company report where you can look at all of your productions together as a group. And then we've got certification reports as well, where you can look at the carbon action plans of your productions and report on those. So these are the different types of accounts that we have available on the calculator. So the main users of our calculator fall into these three groups. So either from a production company, a media group, or a broadcaster. So within a production company, you have admins who are able to see all the company's productions. Admins are also responsible for creating new users and editing their users within the company. You then got reviewers, which should be a senior person on the production. And the reviewer should be someone who can oversee the production, make sure everything's being done on time and being done correctly. And then you've got your user who is responsible for inputting the data. So within media groups and broadcasters, you just have admins, and those accounts can see any production that's associated with their media group or their broadcaster. So now for the interesting bit, let's take a look at the tool. So when you first go onto the Albert website, it may be that you have the option to sign into multiple accounts if you've been given, for example, a user account, a reviewer account, and an admin account. So you'll just need to select which account you want to log into. I'm going to select Albert Productions, which is a fake production company. So none of the data that you see on here is real. And if you're logging into the calculator for the first time, you will be taken to a tips and tricks page. So I'd recommend having a really good look at this page. There's a useful sort of timeline of how the tools work, and also an FAQ section here. So if you need to return to that page at any time, you can click up here, tips and tricks. But usually when you log in, you'll be taken straight to this page of your productions. So in this page, you will be able to see any production that you are associated with. If you're an admin, it will be all the productions of your company. If you're a user, it will just be the ones that you have been added to. You can filter these productions here. So you can filter by production company if you're using a broadcaster account, broadcaster if you're using a production company account, your genres, the type, so whether it's a film or a TV program, for example, the footprint status, so whether that's in progress or overdue or complete, and the carbon action plan status. You can also see the statuses of the footprint and the carbon action plan here. So for example, we've got one complete, in progress, not started, and the statuses are all there. If you need to clone a production, so say you're doing a second series and you don't want to start the production all over again, you can also click these three dots here and you can click clone production or delete production. That clone production feature will probably make a bit more sense after we've gone through the calculator, so don't panic if you're a bit lost. Right, so let's go through creating a production. So to create a production, you click that button there, add production. I'm going to call this new production. You can enter your series name. So this can be what series it is or the year, for example. So let's call it series 1. If your broadcaster or production company has given you a production code, unique identifying number, or a clock code, for example, you can input that here. It's really useful for reporting. You can enter the production type. So let's say this one's a TV program. Your genre, so let's go drama. The production method, so whether you used animation, studio and location, that kind of thing. And then you enter your dates. So your production start date will be roughly your pre-production start date. If you don't have the exact date, that's fine. A rough idea is all we need. Similarly, with your post-production end date, just roughly is fine. These two are the only mandatory dates. If you do have your production start date and your post-production start date and your TX, please do input them. But if you don't know them, then that's fine, as they're not mandatory to put in. So importantly, you will need to put how many episodes you're recording. So if it's a film, you can just put 1, but if it's a series, let's say I'm doing 4 episodes, and then you can put the running time of each episode. You can put in the budget. If you don't know the budget, you can leave that blank, but if you do, please do enter it, as it really helps with our data. You can also change the currency here if you need to as well. So your production company will be pre-populated. If you're doing a co-production, you can add your co-producer here. If not, you can just leave that as is. When you start typing in any of these boxes, for example, with your broadcaster, that will appear as you start typing, or if you're with BBC, for example. If you start typing and your broadcaster isn't there, then you can put unknown. Here you can add your users. So as I said, the users will be people who are inputting data into the calculator. So for example, we can put Daisy as a user here. And your reviewer, again, should be a senior person on the production who can check that everything is being inputted and submitted on time. So if I click Save Production, your production will then be created here. So you'll notice we've got 3 tabs here. We've got Production Details, Carbon Footprint, Carbon Action Plan. If you need to change any of the details that you input in the beginning, you can go to this tab here, Production Details, and click Edit Details, and you can change that at any time. So as I said, we've got the 2 tools. We've got the Carbon Footprint and the Carbon Action Plan. These work in tandem together, but I'm going to go through the Carbon Footprint first. So the carbon footprint should be started in pre-production by doing a draft footprint. So your draft footprint is going to be an estimate of what your impact is likely to be. This can be based on a budget or a previous production, for example. And this will just give you a rough idea of the impact of your production. So you can use your draft footprint to be strategic. So if your travel impact is really large, for example, you can take steps to reduce your travel. But the other purpose of this is so you know what to keep track of throughout production. So if you get to the end and you realize, oh, I haven't kept track of my paint, you might be in trouble. But obviously, if you have this here from the beginning, you know what you need to keep track of and who you need to talk to. So again, if you get stuck, we've got this help bar at the side here. So when you see these purple bubbles, if you click on them, the corresponding help text will appear in this help bar. So remember to keep an eye out for those if you get stuck at any point. So I'm just going to go through and show you a few entries. So the categories that we're looking at, we've got non-filming spaces, filming spaces, travel and transport, accommodation, materials, disposal, and post. So if we look at non-filming spaces to start with, I'm not going to go through every single entry, but I'll show you some important ones and some things that people sometimes forget. So here we can measure our production office, home working, and other spaces. So other spaces would be things like workshops, you know, offsite offices, things like that, anything that you're not filming in, any spaces that you're not using to film. So if we start off with a production office, you can state where your office is in the UK. If you need to change country as well, you have the option here. So let's say we're in Glasgow. Let's go. So again, we've got these little purple bubbles if you get stuck. So with our production office, you first of all need to select what you're measuring. So we've got electricity, gas, heat and steam, quite a modern way of heating. You're unlikely to need to use it, but some buildings do. If you're using any generators in your office, and you'll also need to account for water. So water sounds scary, but actually all you need to do, you can use a meter reading, but you're better off using a benchmark. And you can just say the number of employees in your office and the number of days that they were in there. Again, this can be rough, this can be an average out. If people are coming kind of in and out, just use an average. Save draft, so that's our water. Then we'll need to go back because our production office will also use electricity. So again, you can use a meter reading or a benchmark. I'm going to use a benchmark because it's easier. So let's say I'm in air-conditioned offices. You again can say how many people are working in your office for how many days. And you can say whether it's on certified green energy. So this is if you're on 100% renewable tariff. So let's say mine's not, so we can save draft there. Now, thinking about the production office again, does my production office use gas? If it does, I'll need to go in and put another entry here. And again, I can use the benchmarks here. I know I'm putting different numbers, but that's fine for now. This is just an example. And then we can click Save Draft. If I've also got people working at home, I can add in a home office. And I can put in home working. Again, you can put in number of people working from home and the number of days, and this can be roughly an average. If you've got some people on renewable energy and some people not, you can do 2 separate entries. And if you don't know, just leave this blank, but I'm going to say everyone's really good and on renewable energy at home. So that is non-filming spaces. Again, please put any questions in the chat if you need to. And remember, you can do as many entries as you like. So if you have more than one office, you can just add more than one office. And you can also, if you've got multiple people working on the footprint, please do use this description so other people can see what you've been inputting. So the next part, we've got filming spaces. So for filming spaces, okay, let's say filming spaces, you'll get here what you need to include. So we've got studio, location, and gallery for this one. So let's start off with studio. You should, again, we'll give you different ways of measuring for your studio. So you can either measure by energy consumption, and this will be if you have a meter reading. So you can put in how much energy your studio has used. If your studio manager can give you access to that, you can also input gas and heat and steam in the same way. If you don't have access to a meter reading, again, you can use our benchmarks. So this will be electricity and gas likely, or electricity and heat and steam. You again can put how many days you're in studio, and then you can put the size of your studio and whether your studio is on renewable energy or not. Remember, for this, you will also be using water in your studio. So you should add a water entry. And remember, we can put where we're some notes in here as well. So let's say we're at Pinewood. And for this, you will need to enter your consumption. So how much water was used across the production, and that can be total or daily. So for location, important to note for location that you only need to input power that you paid for. So if you're going to, for example, if you are just going to film one interview at someone's house and you're bringing battery powered equipment and maybe plugging in a light, you don't need to include that. You will only need to include it if you are being charged for the electricity, or if the electricity is included in a location fee. And you'll need to do this by either, getting a meter reading from the location, or if they don't have access to a meter reading and you can't get that, you will need to talk to your kit hire company and ask what the usage of your kit is, and they should be able to tell you how much energy you will have used. If you're using generators on location, you can also put this in here. And again, you can go by fuel amount or fuel spend. Wherever possible, for your final footprint, please use amount rather than spend, because spend is not quite as accurate, but spend is good for a draft footprint if you're not sure what your usage will be. So say you have £500 budgeted for fuel, you can input that there. So let's say Jenny's there. Similarly, in Studio, we had an option to put in generators as well. So make sure you're including any generators that you used in Studio within this section. And you can also put in heaters, special effects, cooking fuel, and other fuels. If you're using a gallery, please put in your gallery here as well. If you don't have access to that, or it's within your studio energy, then don't worry. So next we've got travel and transport. Won't go into loads of detail because it's fairly self-explanatory. Again, we give you different ways of measuring. So say we're measuring a car, you can measure by distance, or you can measure by fuel. And if you're measuring by fuel, you can do it by amount or fuel spend. Similarly, please only use fuel spend for your draft footprint. If you can do amount or distance, it's more accurate. I'll also show you air travel. So for air travel, you can go by distance. And this is much easier to go by distance because all you have to do is type in the airport code. So for example, if we say Heathrow to Oslo, 4 passengers, and you can enter whether that's a return trip or not, and whether you were economy or business class. So save that as cars, but it was actually flights, that's fine. Next we've got accommodation. So so our accommodation goes on benchmark. So you just need to say what type of accommodation you stayed in. If you're not sure, we've got useful help text here that go through what each of the accommodation things mean. So let's say we stayed in an economy hotel. You can measure this 2 ways. So if you have 10 people that you know stayed for 30 nights, you can put in 10 people for 30 nights and find out if your hotel ran on green energy or not. If you are having lots of different people coming in and out, and all you know is that you bought 300 nights in an economy hotel, all you need to do is put 1 bedroom for 300 nights. So a good way of kind of sense checking whether this is okay is to times these 2 numbers together. If it comes back with something like 6,000, you might have made a mistake somewhere. So it's good to check that. So let's do our hotel there. Materials. So this is everything from your set builds. So you've got your timber, plastics, paint, that kind of thing, metal. You've also got costumes. So to measure costumes, we again give you different ways of measuring. So if we go with textiles, you can either, if your costume department is making your costumes, you can put in how much fabric they used. Or if they're buying in items, you can say how many items you bought in. So whether that's, say you bought 5 dresses, you can say whether they're made from recycled material there as well. Similarly with timber, you can go by spend, dimension, or weight. So we're giving you different ways of measuring. You can input the amount of batteries that you used, and you should also input the amount of meals that the production paid for. So obviously this isn't an exact science. You can put in the type of meal here. You don't need to go around taking a survey after lunch of what meal everyone had. This can be, you know, a rough idea. Ask your caterers roughly how many chicken meals, how many vegetarian did you provide? If you're providing per diems, you can use chicken as an average because some people might have gone vegetarian, some people might have gone beef. Chicken is in the middle here. So if you don't know, chicken is the best way to go. And then you can just put in how many meals that you paid for. Again, you can do different kinds of entries. So if you had one vegetarian day and they were all vegetarian and the next was chicken, for example, you can put in your vegetarian day here. So now we move on to disposal. Disposal should roughly correspond with materials of what you're inputting here. So you can enter whatever you're disposing of. So whether that's you know, your food waste, timber, your textiles, any of this, and you can put in how you disposed of it. So let's just say these were our general bins and they were going to landfill. You can put in the container size. So let's say we had 20 bags of rubbish each day. We can measure like that. If you've got a waste management company, they should be able to give you a breakdown of the weight, where it all went, and the type of rubbish. If not, best estimate is best here. And then finally, we've got our post-production. So we can add in the number of days spent in a post-production suite. Again, for electricity, you can use benchmarks. If it's gas, you will need a meter reading. You can say whether they're certified green energy or not. And if your editors are working from home or you're doing any post from home, you can also input your home working here. And again, whether it's certified green energy. So once you've gone through and you've looked at each section, you will then get your draft footprint. So this one very neatly is all even, but you'll get a breakdown of each area of your footprint and the total tons of CO2 from each area. So then you can then use this. This one's fairly neat, but let's say non-filming spaces, I want to reduce that. I could maybe look at, you know, whether, obviously this would be a difficult one to change, but whether my production office could move to renewable energy, or with filming spaces, if I could plug into mains instead of using generators, that kind of thing. So then you go through, film, go through your whole production, either as you go or at the end. You can go through and make sure each entry is correct. So at the moment, they're all draft entries. Once I know it's correct, I can click into this entry and say I hired 2 extra people, but I know that's correct. I can then click finalize. So as I go through and finalize each entry, if my computer wasn't slow, I'll leave that. So once I have finalized every entry, I will then get the option to submit my footprint once each entry is finalized. When you click submit, your footprint will be sent to your Albert assessor, and they'll go through and make sure everything looks okay. If they have any comments on your footprint, they will leave it here. So say if it was to double check your timber, they'll leave it there. And then you, if it's sent back to you, you can go through and check the comments in your notification bar. Similarly, if there's anything you want your assessor to be aware of, for example, production office didn't use gas, you can put that in there for your assessor to know as well. So that is the footprint. If you've got any questions, please pop them in the chat and we'll go through them at the end. I'll now go through the carbon action plan. So as with the footprint, it's really important that the carbon action plan is started in pre-production. That's mandatory. If it's started after pre-production or especially during post, I'm afraid we won't be able to certify this production. The reason for that is this is a plan for how you're going to reduce your footprint. Once you get to production, all of your suppliers have been chosen, all of your decisions have already been made, and it's too late, essentially, to make those changes that you need to make a sustainable production. So whilst you're in pre-production, you click Add Action Plan, and you'll be taken to this page where your action plan will appear. So the way the action plan works is you fill out a questionnaire in pre-production. You'll answer yes or no based on the actions that you're going to be taking. We'll then ask for evidence based on those things that you've said yes to, and then provided it's all good, we will send you the logo. So the questionnaire looks like this. You don't need to think of your own actions. We've thought of everything you can do, and you just go through and say yes or no to each thing. So really importantly, if you say no to an action and it comes up with this red message, your production must comply with this action in order to qualify for certification, you know that that's a mandatory action for the carbon action plan. So you will need to do that in order to pass. Obviously, because you're going through this at the beginning, you are then able to rectify that, and then it's not too late to take that action. So you can go through them. We have an editorial section, which is really important to talk to your editorial teams about this one, if you're a PM or a coordinator. We've got several questions in here where it's really important that we hear from the editorial team. For example, how have you ensured that substantial on-screen components of this programme are not normalising unsustainable behaviour? Sounds very wordy. We just want to hear that you're not glamorising unsustainable behaviour, or if you are, what's the reason for that, and have you thought about the implications? We've got a really helpful article here which helps you go through and answer that question. You can say whether climate or sustainability features in your dialogue of the programme. Similarly, if it appears in background actions or props. You'll then, if you say yes to these questions, be given some data gathering questions. So these questions don't affect your score, but these help us look at the state of editorial content and how much and which areas are being spoken about. So we've got those types of questions. We also have filter questions. So this is an example of a filter question. Is the production using a production office? If you say no to that question, you won't get any questions about production offices. That doesn't affect your score at all. That just means we're not asking you irrelevant questions. If you say yes, you will then get questions about your production office. When you go through again, there is one other question that I will just quickly highlight, two other questions. So one of them is this, and this is, has the production eliminated mainland domestic air travel? If you say no, this is the only mandatory question where a text box for you to explain why you've said no will appear. If you have used domestic flights, this is something, it is a mandatory question to eliminate domestic flights, but we understand sometimes things can happen and there may be exceptional circumstances why you need to use them. If that is the case, please explain here. And then we'll then probably ask for evidence based on what you've said of the flights that you've taken and why. And then just one other question to highlight is this carbon neutral production section. And this question is, will the production offset its emissions calculated from the Albert calculator? So it's now mandatory to offset your remaining emissions if you're going for certification in the UK. This is not mandatory for international productions at this stage. But if you are based in the UK, you will need to offset your emissions. In your carbon footprint, you will see an estimate for your offset price here as you go through. And once your production has been approved by our auditors, you can directly click through and offset your production through the Albert calculator by clicking here. So once you've gone through your questionnaire, it will then be sent to your Albert assessors. We will select around 10 questions for you to provide evidence on. So it will then come back to you, it will say evidence required. You can click through. When you click into the carbon action plan, you'll have a list of questions that you need to provide evidence for. So for example, here you can just click to upload. Will everyone on the production be sent a green memo prior to filming? You can upload your green memo here. You can also give any notes or comments for your attachments and explain how you took each action. One thing that's coming soon is extensive help text on the carbon action plan questions. So do again keep an eye out for those help bubbles because they will be there soon. When you have uploaded as much evidence as you can, you'll be able to submit that to us for assessment, and your Albert assessor will take a look at your evidence again within 10 working days. Really importantly, if you need the logo for your production, make sure to submit your evidence at least 10 days before you need the logo. If you are a live production or you need the logo before you're going to have all of your evidence, for example, you probably won't have your offset invoice till the end, that's fine. You can submit as much as you have. Try to make sure it's at least 60%, or if it's a live program, make sure you've got planning emails and documents and things like that to show you will be taking the actions. And then we can pre-approve your logo. So you can use that logo and then upload the rest of the evidence at the end. If that happens, your carbon action plan will go to completion required. You'll see this, this status here. You can then upload the rest and resubmit when you've uploaded everything. If your carbon action plan comes back as amendments required, that means your evidence hasn't been quite right, and we need to see more before we can give the logo. For either of these statuses, whatever we need extra will be listed in the notification bar. So it might say, please upload green memo, for example. Or if it's completion required, it might say, please upload your offset invoice at the end and remember to resubmit. Or you might, your production might come back as complete, in which case you're done. You can use the logo and that's all finished. On the rare occasion that a carbon action plan is rejected, the Albert team will email you with why it has been rejected and also write a note in the notification bar as well to let you know. So that is the main feature of the Carbon Action Plan and the calculator. So again, if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat. The other feature to note is this report section. So as soon as any production is finished, a standard report will appear in this report section straight away. So you'll have your emissions report here. You can go through, see a breakdown of your production, where you've filmed, the breakdown of each section. So for example, here's your air travel, taxi, things like that. You can also download that and share that with your team. If you wanted to create a multiple production report or a company report, you can also do so here by clicking create new report. If your production is prior to 2021, it won't appear in the report section, but you can email albert@bafta.org to get those reports. You can do a combined production report, which is a multiple production report, either all of your productions, all from one type or genre, or you can choose specific productions here, go through and list them. You can compare to average, so you can select all of yours from one genre or two or whatever you want to do, and then compare them to all other productions of those genres, for example, or you can compare one production to the average. And then you can also look at your Carbon Action Plan reports, which will show you how you're doing in overall in your productions, and your top performing productions, your best questions, and also the ones that you can improve on. All of these reports you can download as an Excel or a PDF. And if you get stuck on those, we also have a document outlining all of our reports on the website and how to use them. So we'll now go back to the presentation quickly for some final resources and for some questions. So if you still have questions or need some help, here are some resources available to you. So the most important one is the Albert website. We've got loads of tips and tricks on there, loads of case studies of other productions who have been successful in their sustainability, lots of a section of what you can do in your role, lots of articles about best practice. There's a whole host of information, so do have a look on there. Please do check our YouTube channel. We've got lots of how-to videos. Make sure to give us a follow on social media, because we're always kind of updating our resources as well. Similarly, our newsletter is a great one to follow, because lots of new case studies are posted in that. We've also got the tips and tricks section and help section on the tool, so do go there if you get stuck as well. And on our website as well, we've got a quick start guide, which is really useful, just gives you an exact timeline of how to use the tools. So a whole host of resources for you to use. If you are still stuck, please do email albert@bafta.org and the team will get back to you as soon as they can. So please do get in touch with any questions as well. So coming soon, we've got these translations that are going to be made live on the calculator. We've also got Welsh, which hasn't been listed here yet. But we will be making those translations live as soon as possible, which is really exciting. And now we have some time for questions. So please do put any questions in the Q&A and we will go through them.